I don't fish alone a lot, but I have had some pretty profound moments by myself, just spiritually, when just like good for my soul and just connected to something bigger than myself and feeling very small.
I used to camp up here when I was a kid. I remember one day in the Warden Service, they asked, "Where do you want to be in 5 years in this outfit?" And I remember saying, "District Game Warden in Rangeley, Maine." And I got there in 3 years, so I was very fortunate.
Grief is just a great big bag of love, but it ain't got any place to go. It changes how you look at everything. It changes how you think. It changes everything for the rest of your life.
Welcome to the Flyline Podcast, where we enjoy the interesting stories behind the legendary guides and luminaries connected to Maine fishing. I'm Michael Jones. Today, I'm joined by a very special father and son duo, John and Nate Wight. John and Nate Wight are third and fourth generation Maine guides whose lives have been shaped by teaching, guiding, and a deep respect for the outdoors. John, a longtime guide and teacher at Gould Academy, has spent decades leading canoe trips, fishing Maine waters, and sharing his knowledge with generations of students and sportsmen. In this episode, John reflects on his early days guiding, memorable canoe trips on Maine's rivers, and the lessons learned from teaching and guiding in all kinds of conditions. He shares stories from a life spent helping others connect with Maine's rivers, woods, and traditions. Nate, following closely in his father's footsteps, talks about growing up in the guiding world, being a professional fly tyer, working at Libby's camps, and finding his own path as a Maine guide. He shares what fly fishing and guiding mean to him and how those experiences continue to shape his life and work. Together, John and Nate talk about their shared love of teaching, the importance of preserving fisheries, and the joy that comes from passing outdoor traditions on to others. It comes with great pleasure to introduce the Flyline Podcast audience to this great father and son guiding duo, John and Nate Wight. Welcome to the Flyline Podcast.
Great to have you here. I've read your posts. I met you before, but this is a real pleasure for me.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having us on, Michael.
Oh, absolutely. Nate, thank you. And you're really the one that made it possible for me. We met this summer working together as guides, cleaning up the Androscoggin River.
Yes, we did.
We had a volunteer cleanup day, and I've been dying to get you on the podcast and your dad.
Yeah.
Because, John, you're 80 this year.
Yes, I am.
And I think you have an incredible legacy to tell our audience about your life as a guide, your life as an educator. And there's more to not your life, but your parents, your father, your grandfather.
Yes.
Tell me about your father and your grandfather.
Well, my grandfather ran a boys' camp in Bolster's Mills during the 20s and 30s for about 30 or so boys. He taught at the William Penn Charter School in Philadelphia. And those kids spent 6 to 8 weeks with him in the summertime, canoeing, fishing, riflery, horses, tennis, all kinds of stuff. And that's where my dad got introduced to all the things that he eventually exposed me to. My grandfather was a Maine guide, and my dad became one after he ran a bunch of Allagash trips. And it just seemed natural for me to kind of follow suit. And then I guess this guy kind of dovetailed onto the rest of us.
He sure did.
Growing up in the shadow of your father, do you remember some of his early guiding trips? Did you get to go on them as a young boy?
Not a whole lot of them, but I did get to go on a few trips with them and absolutely enjoyed just being in the outdoors with both of them because I got to do trips with both dad and grandpa.
Yeah.
Which was a lot of fun.
Now, just for our audience, Bolster's Mills.
It's the eastern edge of Harrison, Maine.
Right.
It's on the Crooked River.
Right.
Yeah.
On the Crooked River, which, of course, is a native landlocked salmon fishery.
Caught my first landlocks at Scribner's Mills.
Exactly.
Back when it was still a working sawmill.
Right. Right. And they've done a lot of restoration work on the Crooked River. But I want to go back, John. Thank you for sharing that about your dad and your grandfather. How many trips have you done on the Allagash in your life?
81.
81 trips on the Allagash, ladies and gentlemen. That's 81 more than I've done.
Well, 253 trips on rivers and lakes in the state of Maine.
Amazing. So I would think of you as a tripping guide.
Probably more so than fishing because the fishing here was always early season. And then I spent my time during the summertime running canoe trips, 4 to 5 trips a summer, and then I'd go back to fishing in the fall. But teaching school, you can't get out early enough in the spring to do the really early spring fishing, and I can't do the September stuff when I'm teaching school.
Right.
But I filled in all the rest of that time that I could between fishing and canoeing.
How did your father give you all of that interest? But he was doing the same kinds of trips. So you kind of, as you said, you dovetailed with Nate. You dovetailed with your father.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my grandfather.
Who was doing the same.
Yeah.
Do you feel like people are still interested today in doing these long-term canoe trips as they were when you were first starting out? Do you feel like it's changed at all, John?
I do think it's changed. I mean, we never had trouble getting a group of middle school age kids to do a 3-week Allagash trip, starting on the west branch of the Penobscot and going all the way to Allagash. We always filled those trips. If I worked them alone, I might have 5 kids. If Dad and I worked them together, we might have had like 6. Try to keep the canoes even.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I tried to do that was about 15 or 16 years ago. I couldn't get people to give up 3 weeks with their young kids to go do those things.
Why do you think that is?
I just think life has become more complicated. There's more options for kids today than there were in the early years that Dad and I were doing that. And 3 weeks is a lot of time in the modern world for people to give up.
It is.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Allagash, because I have not done the Allagash trip. What is it that draws you and others to the Allagash, that experience?
My dad made his first trip on the Allagash the year that the old wooden Churchill Dam went out. And he'd always been all over other places, but as soon as he did the Allagash, he was just smitten by it. And of course, he told stories. And when he got home, he hooked me in right away. I had to go. The next year I went. And it was a 3-week trip. And it was just like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. And it's just ballooned from there. It just kept going. We started every year with a 3-week trip, and then we do 3 or 4 more week-long Allagash trips. He advertised a little bit, but word of mouth is what kept us going and has kept my entire career. I have never advertised to run a canoe trip or a fishing trip, and yet I've never had any trouble getting clients that sign up to go.
And who are the clients?
They're all over the map, from people from California to the middle of the country to lots of local folks as well, family groups. I've always said to people, look, I'm not going to publish a schedule like a lot of people do. Said, if you want to go someplace in the Maine on a canoe trip, you need to contact me. You need to tell me how much time you have, what kind of canoeing, what kind of trip you want, where you might want to go. And I said, then we'll build it from there. Dad did the same thing. He didn't want to be a cruise director on a trip. He wanted a group of people that had common interests in going someplace. They all knew each other already, so we didn't have to do all the introduction thing. And if they have a collective interest in going to do the St. John or the Allagash or the St. Croix, perfect. It makes it a lot easier for the guide running the trip to make that a very successful opportunity.
Now, I know my father did Allagash trips, just like you have done, John. And I remember there being a lot of logistical challenges going into it. As an example, just the portages, but also the shuttle, the vehicle.
Yes.
Talk about that.
Well, in the early days, for me, the early days, 1960 was my first Allagash experience. I believe Dad used a Folsom's Flying Service would put caches down our 3-week trip. Actually, he only put down one. He put one down at Lock Dam. But Dad found somebody in Greenville who would drive his vehicle to Allagash, and then Folsom would fly to deliver the cache. They would go on to the Allagash country and pick up the driver and bring him back to Greenville.
Amazing. So you would go from, you described the West Branch to Allagash.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's a really unique area that you were in, and very few people know about it. Very few people have seen it, but you've been through there 80 times, John.
Yeah.
You must know that place like the back of your hand.
I do, but people always say, "Aren't you sick?" I say, "No," because I have people who haven't been there before. It's all new to them,
Hmm.
and getting to share stories I have, and my experience in that country, which is no longer as complete, is not as complete as some people have, but I do have that 65 years of background on the Allagash. I said, "No, it's not boring to me.
Hmm.
I've got people to work with, and they haven't seen the stuff that I've seen."
Right. And it's changed. I know
Oh, yeah.
that the logging and the clear cutting has really changed the face of the Allagash watershed. Let's get Nate involved. Nate,
Yes.
do you remember the first time you went down the Allagash?
I do. Yep.
Tell me about it.
It was not until my freshman year in high school. That would have been 90, 91 time frame. And I did the Allagash with my sister Amanda, dad, and grandpa, just the four of us.
Just the 4
Yeah. And we did just the upper half of the Allagash that year through to would have been Umsaskis,
Yeah.
probably Umsaskis Thoroughfare. And then the next year we did the second half of the trip. But we made sure that we ran Chase Rapids in there both years because that was the most important part. And a fun little side thing to that, that was where I learned how to paddle stern in a canoe, was from my grandfather paddling Chase Rapids. And he basically sat in the front of the canoe the first time down through, taught me how to stand up, read water, do all of that. The second trip through, he had his camcorder and he sat down in the front of the canoe and turned around and said, "Don't get me wet."
That's cool.
And that's how I learned how to paddle stern as a Maine guide.
Yeah. Now, tell me about the canoes you guys were using. Were they boats that you built?
No. At that point, we were running Old Town canoes and some Grumman still. Dad and Grandpa was a Grumman canoe dealer for a long time. Sold Grumman canoes to a lot of the summer camps around the state of Maine. But we were running plastic boats at that point.
Right.
Old Town canoes at that point. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I've talked a lot with different guests about canoes in general over the years of doing the podcast, but Old Town, of course, really, they did with Royal X and their Discovery boats, which were more of the economical boats. What a great boat for a livery or renting canoes or a guide. So did you start getting into using the polymer boats more than the aluminum? They were just more durable, didn't require maintenance.
Yes, but the other part of the history of the Wight family is that my father figured out early, after breaking up a couple of canvas canoes in rapids, that there was something to the old world canoe time from birch bark and canvas about poling. So he was not a poler, but he adapted his whitewater canoe style to poling. So he taught kids, and he taught me early to go slower than the water and learn to lead with your stern, like you do if you're poling. When you're poling, you're standing up, you snub the canoe up to stop its downstream progress. And then you move the stern. If I want to go to the right, I let the stern go to the right. So the water slides down the left-hand side of the canoe, pushing my canoe to the right. I keep the angle, depends upon how deep the water is, how fast the water is. I keep the angle so that it's moving me to the right. I get as far over as I want. I put the pole in on the other side. I straighten the canoe, and I let it slide by whatever obstacle is in front of us. So it takes us longer to canoe rapids, but we don't hit stuff.
Doesn't this sound eerily familiar to something else that we do, Nate?
Drift boating.
Yeah, that's exactly how you drive a drift boat.
Well, I was going to say that's being taught that way as a young man, to slow down, take your time, read water, do all of that, was a very easy segue into learning how to row a drift boat, because I already had that built into me, that, the slowing down, the reading water and all of that stuff, turning with your stern is the big thing. And I preach it all the time when people are like, how do you row a drift boat? Or can I try rowing your drift boat? Sure. But you got to slow down. You got to turn with a stern. You can't row, you can't paddle fast enough in a canoe to avoid objects in a river. So slowing down is the only way to get around stuff.
Right.
Right. And I much like Dad, I spent a lot of my time as a youth with him away on trips. And when I did get to go on those eventually, and through the same process he did, becoming a better woodsman before I got to do that stuff, it really built more of that ability to read water, canoe better, be a more responsible steward of the watershed or river system that you're on, simply just by slowing down and looking at things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
You'd never propel yourself with a pole down through a rapid accelerating.
You can't.
Right? You'd never do that.
Right.
I just think it's so interesting. Polling is almost like a lost art. You don't see people doing it anymore. There is a group that is not outward bound, but there's a group up in the Greenville area that is Chip Cochran is who it is.
Yes.
And Chip and
Lonnie.
Lonnie or Laney,
I think
Love. I should have them on the podcast. They teach polling.
Yes.
And they do it on the East Outlet. And so I'd be guiding in my drift boat. And of course, they're using a pole with like a metal end to it.
Yes.
And what I didn't like about that is we're sitting out there trying to catch fish and they're ticking the bottom of the river and driving the fish insane. So,
yeah.
But it's really cool to watch because that's the way the Native Americans, I believe, traveled the river upstream. Much more efficient to pole upriver than to try to paddle against a current or to drag your canoe up the shoreline. Actually, have you done a lot of polling, John?
Yes.
Tell me about it. What was it like learning it, and how efficient is it?
Well, I learned basically myself because my dad didn't pole, but I learned by taking trips up Allagash Stream into Allagash Lake. We could pole up a lot. You could paddle as far as you can, and then pole as much as you can, and then sometimes we'd have to get out and just get in the water and track it up, especially around those two ledges below Little Round Pond at Little Allagash Falls. And then I could pole most of the way up to Allagash Lake from there. And I just practice. And then as Nate said, that just when I got bitten by the drift boat craze, it just was natural. I didn't have to read a book or anything. I just got in a drift boat and went down the upper Andro. It's like, well, this is great.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. That's how I probably first heard your name. Was I was living in the Farmington area and I heard about, I remembered Sandy McGregor was someone that was doing, he called himself the master of the Androscoggin. He had a little 2-wheel drive van and a drift boat. But before he was doing it, you were doing it.
Yeah.
And tell me about some of your early, what was the genesis of getting a drift boat or building a drift boat? What happened? Bring me back to when it all started.
Okay, but I was fishing the 13-mile woods from a canoe and from wading the shore for several years before I met, I'm not going to be able to say his name. He ran a little guide service. It sounds to me, if I remember, it was like Moose Jaw. He had one of the first drift boats on the upper Andro. He came from the west, where he brought his drift boat home with him. So I'm fishing from the shore one day, and he says, "Hey, I'm just doing a test run this morning. You want to go for a ride?" I said, "Sure." I jumped in his drift boat, and that was like, bang. That's when it happened.
Yeah.
I said, I have to have one.
John, tell me, I know where the 13-mile wilderness is, but tell the audience where the 13-mile wilderness is.
It's the Cedar Rapids below Errol, New Hampshire.
On the Androscoggin.
On the Androscoggin.
Right. So that's where you were.
Yes.
What was the fishing like?
Fishing was outstanding. You could catch brook trout, landlocked salmon, and browns all in the same water. It was easy access, easy putting in, easy taking out. Great place. I used to sometimes camp at Malajawak Campground and meet clients there.
Yeah. And you'd use a canoe.
I did it in the beginning until I got the drift boat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we talked about you running the section of river in New Hampshire, but you probably started guiding in Maine with your drift boat too. John?
I did. I ran sections of the Androscoggin here locally. I don't remember. I didn't put it in anything else besides the Upper Andro in New Hampshire and the sections down here. But I ran a lot of trips from Shelburne Power Station on the Andro. I'd put my boat right over the guardrail, belay it around the bottom of a guardrail post with a rope, and I'd walk down on the left-hand side of the boat with the belay line in my other hand, keeping the boat off the big rocks, and put in right below the powerhouse, right there,
Right.
off the bridge.
There's a new put in there now. They've actually put a put in there. I just used it for the first time this last year. But I have thrown my drift boat over that guardrail many times.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about, and that wasn't easy. But I'm interested in knowing what the fishing was like, because it's really changed for the worse now.
Yeah.
And it was quite good back then. It
Yes,
wasn't
it was.
uncommon to catch trophy trout.
Yeah. I met a man, and I would never be able to come up with his name. He was a lot older than me at the time. I was drift boating on that section from the power station down towards Shelburne, and he stopped, and his wife was in his canoe, and they stopped, and he said, "I pulled out short of this pool for you to fish this." He said, "I watched you today fish a lot of really good places, but," he said, "I wanted to make sure you saw this one as well." So we got to talking, and he said, "The fishing has not been as good here since New Hampshire changed the rules to try to make this a trophy catch and release, single-pointed artificial lure river." And he said, as soon as they did that, he said a lot of those big fish went on somebody's wall the year before they started it, because the New Hampshire fish and game people were around talking to local people about it, and the local people were very upset by the whole plan.
Of it becoming more restricted.
Yes.
So they felt it was the last chance to pull a trophy out before the regulations.
And he said they did.
And they did.
They did. I said, "What was the biggest rainbow you ever caught on this river?" He said, 34 inches.
Wow.
And he said that was not an unusual. Fish from 28 to 30 plus inches were relatively common before they changed the regulations.
Where do you think those fish, were they released from a hatchery, John, or do you think that they were naturally reproducing in the tributaries coming into? There's a lot of tributaries coming into the Androscoggin. We're doing a lot of talk about it right now.
And there's a lot of cold water coming out of the mountain streams that even in the summer when the river is low, it's still cold water percolating through the gravel, and it holds trout when the temperatures rise.
Do you think those trout were not native, but do you think that they were wild to the river? In other words, they were born in the river?
A lot of them were native-born fish, because I've caught in some of the tributaries. I've caught lots of juvenile rainbows that have the rainbow color behind the thumbprints of the power marks. Those are not. They don't stock those fish that young. So a lot of those fish were born in the river.
Right.
So originally they were stocked because we didn't have rainbows here. But there's been a lot of natural production, in the rivers, in the tributaries, and the same with brook trout. I've caught lots of brook trout that I know are born here, not just the stockers.
Yeah.
And they don't have, 10,000 years of background built into hardwired into their skulls, but they are passing on information to the next generation that the hatchery fish don't have.
That's right. We did float stocking in 2000 to 2000, whatever, it doesn't matter. And with the best intentions, we thought that was a smart thing to do a couple of times a year.
Yeah.
Money was not an object when it came to trying to promote the fishing in Bethel. But I think with the best intentions, we did more damage than we did good. And we didn't know we were doing it. And now we're actually, I say we, but myself and at least Alex are talking about trying to get the state to do less stocking and to get back to what you were talking about, John, which was if you just leave it alone and allow those fish with that identity of basically being born in a river to not be outcompeted by the state employees.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden you might have 2,000 hatchery-reared brook trout or rainbows living in the same cold water source as a beautiful 17-inch wild rainbow, not a native fish, right? This fish was born in the river, was never intended, didn't evolve in the river in terms of 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of talking, but do you agree with what I'm saying?
No, I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And that was one of the major topics of conversation when Francis Brodigan had 5 or 6 weeks of meetings at the Bethel Inn. He invited guides, as me as well, to come and talk about what to do with the fishery in the Androscoggin River.
Right.
I said, so those fish find cold water seams, and they're all there. The native fishes, the ones that are born and raised in the river, and the stockers are all there at the same time, and people are beating the living daylights out of them.
Right.
Can't you do anything about that? And he said, we don't have the manpower. He said, how many of those places from Shelburne down the river do you know? I said, I know about 7 or 8 of them where the fish stay when the water temperature is high. I don't fish for them. But I said, other people do.
There's so many tributaries that are coming in
Yeah.
that let's back up again. This audience has got to be just wondering, you just talked about a 34-inch rainbow trout. Could we bring it back, John?
I don't have an answer to that. I really do not know. I mean, before that public announcement that they were going to restrict the fishing from Shelburne down to the New Hampshire line, they were going to restrict it more in those days, and a lot of those big fish disappeared. I have no idea whether they could come back or not.
Right.
I don't. I mean, I haven't fished that river from the last time I put my drift boat in there. I think I've been in there once in a canoe since,
right.
And I noticed that even all the famous spots I used to stop with clients that I said, this is a great place to fish. It just wasn't the same.
In what way?
We weren't catching as many fish,
right.
and we weren't catching as many big fish.
But the substrate of the river, the banks, you don't think that the river itself has changed as much as the fish have changed in it?
I think the fishing has changed.
Right. No, I agree with you.
And I don't have an answer to it. I really don't.
No. If you did, you'd be a very wise
man.
Well,
people used to call me, and by word of mouth, they would find out about me, and they would call, and they'd say, if we drift a section of the Androscoggin, do I have a chance to catch an 18-inch rainbow? And I'd say, absolutely. If somebody called me and asked me that today, I would say, highly unlikely you're going to catch an 18-inch rainbow in the Andro.
Right. And when we started guiding, Nate, I really started guiding, like when you were building your boat.
Yeah.
That's when I really started kind of running the Andro, which would have been 98, 99, 2000.
Yep.
And the fishing was still holding up then.
Yes.
And it was not uncommon to put in Shelburne and come down through and not catch an 18 to 21-inch brown trout or rainbow. It would be surprising if you got to Twin Bridges. What town is that? When you leave Shelburne Dam and you come down in toward, you haven't got to Maine yet.
That's Shelburne Village
itself. It is Shelburne Village itself, right?
Yep.
And that little section just between the dam and that village, you could catch some nice fish.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Almost every time.
Yes.
Yeah. And, and even going from just the pools below where those, I call it Twin Bridges because they've taken a bridge out, but there used to be two there, right?
Yeah.
That next pool just below those bridges, it gets wide, turns to the right, and then turns back to the left, and there's a long pile of rocks along the right-hand side. You could spend hours right in there.
Yes.
And catch really nice trout.
Yep.
And like you said, John, I went down through there this springtime, and we did catch fish. We caught 2 or 3. We didn't catch a dozen.
Yeah.
And nothing was enormous.
Yeah.
There is a trout fishery there, but I'd really like to see it come back. And I think that it's really, one of the reasons I was excited to sit down and talk to you, John, was I wanted to hear about it when you were doing it.
Well, you when you were working for Rocky, you even talked to me about guys that were catching 80 to 100 fish in an evening out on sections of the Andro, not too far out of West Bethel.
Yeah, but you gotta remember that was the time frame when we were dumping thousands of fish in every year. And that's the key to it. I think, these guys were catching tons of fish, but they weren't catching wild fish necessarily. They were probably catching a lot of our leftover stocky fish that happened in there.
I would put in Gilead. Well, it's not where we put in now, but we used to put in where the little fire hydrant was.
Yes.
In Gilead itself, just below the bridge downstream. And I would drop down into the first quick. You want to find a rainbow in the Androscoggin. Show me the fastest water you can find, right, guys?
Rainbow Run.
Rainbow Run. And you would put the anchor down and you wouldn't have to lift it up for an hour because your clients with a green woolly bugger would catch one after the other, after the other, after the other. Now that appeals to maybe someone that just got out of the Orvis School of Fly Fishing and they want to just quote unquote catch fish.
Yeah.
But that doesn't appeal to us. Why does that not appeal to us, John?
It seems too easy. It really does. I mean, there were days I had in the 13-mile woods and sections of the Andro where fishing was just like that for me and for my clients. And they're happy as can be. And I'm going, geez, this is boring. I don't even have to change flies. I don't have to go through my fly box and look for the one that they're going to take. And I don't have to look for new spots because we're going to sit right here and we're going to catch fish after fish after fish.
I love it. Yeah.
And the clients are happy. Usually get a decent tip. And I'm just going, this is like a no-brainer. It's like, it's not even work for me. It's just.
And I think in some ways that was the vision that Bethel had, was they wanted to have, and I say Bethel, I mean the Chamber of Commerce and the guides and all of us together, because we were all of us had a hat in a circle of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think with the best intentions, to say you could have an 80 fish night, Nate, right?
Yeah.
That sounds good on paper, but it comes at the expense of maybe destroying the
100%.
the wild fishery
100%
that your dad experienced, which I would like to get back to. I'd like to see that happen again, because if you go out, like I go out to Idaho every summer in the fall and I fish for a week, and there are sections of the river that I fish that they don't stock and they haven't stocked in over 50 years. These fish naturally reproduce, they protect them. You can't just go down there with a spinning rod and pull out, a 21-inch rainbow trout. And if we just had a healthy ecosystem that had cold water refuge like they have out there here, there's no reason it wouldn't be successful. And Maine needs more of that. We need to spread these guys away from the McGalloway and the Rapid River and the East Outlet and the West Branch of the Penobscot, because if you're a trout fisherman and you're a kind of dyed-in-the-wool trout fisherman, in other words, you don't fish for smallmouth in the middle of the summer, you just want to go after those trout, you're really raising hell with them to go to Mailbox Pool in July.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're killing them.
Yeah. And it's sad. So the Ranger Lakes Heritage Trust put up a angler count. You put 7,000 people in one pool to fish for those trout. Those trout must have tattoo marks all through their face, right?
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean to shame anglers for going there and doing that, but as guides, we have to be willing to, and that's what drift boating did for us.
Yes.
That allowed us to kind of branch out and do different things. Nate, I want to talk more about your guiding.
Yeah.
Tell me about your early, getting into guiding. Did you know you were going to be a fly fishing guide? Were you going to be a river guide?
Yeah. So I'm the end of the era with the guide's license where the regulations changed. So I got my master's license at that time frame where they were like, we're changing the way this works. So if you want your master's, come back and take your last written test. At that point, I had already had my recreation in fishing because of family history. And went back and got my hunting just to have it. Right. I wanted to be from a young age in law enforcement. I either wanted to be a Maine state trooper or do something in law enforcement. Well, I quickly discovered that was not for me, but I did have my guide's license, and I was given the opportunity by Rocky and Lisa Frieda to come work with them at Sun Valley Sports and help develop their fly fishing program and get their fly shop up and running. And it snowballed from there. I mean, it really snowballed. And of course, the whole drift boat thing, fishing with dad and learning about the river from dad and trying to find opportunities to run the drift boats in different spots around here to, flash forward to working with Rocky and Lisa, and we were running 2 separate drift boats, and sometimes we were running 5, 6, 7 days a week. Talking about fish numbers, you're talking great for the customer, great to make you look good as a guide, but probably not the greatest for the overall longevity of the river system or the quality of fishing that we became accustomed to as anglers, the stuff that we wanted to experience and do. Stock trout are easy to fool compared to wild fish. Your opportunities are very much easier. You talked about olive woolly bugger. I always ran olive woolly bugger and a brown Kaufman stonefly, and you'd go 50-50 whether you caught a fish on one or the other.
Right.
And you could sit there all day and do that same thing, and you could skip over big sections of the river. So I've done a lot of different things in my life, but guiding has always been that thing that I've come back to, because after my first day of guiding fishermen and watching the excitement of them catch fish, it, for lack of better words, it hooked me on the fact that this is great. I love watching other people experience something that I got to grow up doing as a kid and can do on a daily basis if I want to.
I don't wake up in the morning to guide a trip and dread it.
No.
It's something that every day is different.
Yes.
We know that we have very little control over what's going to happen.
100%.
And it's a magical privilege to be able to take people and knowing that they're paying you to do this.
Yeah.
That they're relying on your instincts and your skill sets.
Yeah.
When you first start out, when you're in your 20s, right? When we were young, Nate, we didn't have that confidence.
No.
That you may have now.
Yeah.
Talk about your evolution as a guide and how that changed for you. Like, how did you start to get more confidence in your guiding? Like you're a tire, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about your fly time and how that influenced your guiding.
So, fly time, not to dive too deep into it. Fly time really saved my life. I was in a bad place. I was addicted to alcohol. And fly tying was one of those things that helped me break that habit, break away from that. Whether it was just simply keeping myself busy, trying to make myself better at it. And fly tying was something that, obviously Dad taught to me. I think mostly because he got tired of me using his flies. But it truly saved my life, and fly tying has always been that thing that I can fall back onto if I'm having a bad day. But what fly tying did for me, more so as a guide, is it allowed me to tweak fly patterns, to try new things, to say, okay, this pattern just really isn't working the way that I want it to. What else can I do to this to make it look more buggy or more appealing to the fish? And it helped my guiding immensely. Once I started to find patterns that worked really well for me, I tied those. I used those a lot with customers, and of course, showing flies to customers leads to customers wanting flies from you too. So it builds that other side of the business too.
Were you doing anything when you were just for the Rocky and Lisa Frieda ran a fly shop in Bethel area?
Yes.
It originally was kind of right in the middle of Bethel, and then they moved it up to what?
We're on the Center River Access Road.
Exactly.
Logistically, having two shop locations was pretty tough on them. And, shelling out that extra money for that second location that was really open in just the summertime for the canoe and kayak rental and small fishing side wasn't worth it to them.
No. And it was a rental at that point. So they moved their place. Didn't they have it right next to their house?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what I remember. Because we brought Lefty Cray.
Yes.
Lefty came up to fish with me for a week, and we went and visited with Rocky and Lisa. And I think you might have been there.
I was there.
Came. Yeah, I remember that as well.
Yeah.
And that was when Rocky had and Lisa had dedicated themselves to saying, this is what we're going to do. We're going to stay here. We're not going to be on the main. But you didn't need to really be on the main path, because if you were looking for a fishing guide, you guys were the only show in town.
Yes.
And that being said, were you doing anything other than the Androscoggin? I almost feel like you were.
So we did venture into some other areas. We would fish some of the local ponds. We would, at one point, I was registered in New Hampshire as well as a guide, so we would fish that upper Andros stretch there. Rocky did go to get his New Hampshire guide's license, but didn't spend a lot of time in that upper stretch. He really was focused on running the business and trying to make the fishery what we thought at the time was going to be better.
Right.
So he really focused hard on that upper Androscoggin Anglers Alliance and the TU portion of things. We really did not venture too far out of the Bethel.
Yeah, you weren't going to Rangeley with the people or anything like that?
No, on occasion we would, but we didn't need to.
No.
We could fish here. The only thing that really changed for us was when the water temperatures really started to get warm, and Rocky and I had a conversation one day about the fact that we needed to stop trout fishing because it was too warm and we're just beating on the fish. He said, what else are we going to do? And I said, I've heard rumors about the smallmouth fishery. And that's when we started poking our way farther south on the river,
right,
or east, as you could say, on the river, and really started to smallmouth fish. My first ever customer smallmouth fishing, they booked a trip with us. And I told them straight up, I have zero experience smallmouth fishing. And they said, we got you. You just row the boat and we'll teach you everything we know. Those guys became longtime friends, longtime customers, and really sealed the deal for me about smallmouth fishing in Maine when it's time to leave the trout alone.
John, did you ever do any smallmouth fishing?
Yes. I was introduced to it by a friend of mine who took me down from Mexico down toward Canton, and I was blown away by surface fishing, casting along the shore and twitching a floating popper and having those smallmouth just wail on it. And I never guided much down there, but I guided a couple of times, but it was getting toward the end of my career anyway, and I still think about going down there. I had guys break 7-weight rods on smallies and fast. I said, guys, those fish, you're talking about a fish that's heavy and it's in current, and they're strong. They fight really, really hard to beginning to ease up on them. And sure enough, he broke a 7-weight Orvis rod right off just above the grip. It's like, woo.
Yeah.
Yipes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lefty would say that you could tie a 16-inch brown trout to a 16-inch smallmouth bass, and that smallmouth would tow that brown trout all around the pool.
Yep.
We talked about having difficult, trout fishing as it's evolved or devolved.
Yes.
Where we were just talking about for a long time in the trout section. But for some strange reason, the smallmouth fishing on that middle section of the Androscoggin River has become world-class.
Yes.
And we're trying to find out ways to branch out so we're not all just hitting the same 2 or 3 sections of river, because just like anything else, you can do damage to a section of river if you're hitting it every day, day after day,
100%.
multiple guides. So
yeah,
we're all trying to do our own best practices of trying to, maybe not pound the same place or fish it differently. My jet boat has allowed me to fish like deeper, lower sections of the river.
Same.
Where I normally wouldn't want to kind of drift through it with a drift boat because it just takes too long.
Same.
And you go through slower. It's just too boring in places. But there's good fishing if you go to one spot or 2 or 3 spots with the jet boat.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go down the jet boat path too far because that's a whole discussion for another time. But this has been fun, guys. So far, we've just gotten started. Let's take a quick break and we'll come back because I want to hear some stories about some of your guiding endeavors that we haven't talked about yet. Okay. Sound good?
Great.
All right.
Super.
In this Flyline flashback, we share the Maine tradition of the President's salmon. Maine's rivers were so rich with life that their first salmon of spring was deemed worthy of the White House itself. In the spring of 1912, a Bangor fisherman named Carl Anderson landed an 11-pound Atlantic salmon on the Penobscot River. Instead of keeping it, Anderson packed the fish in straw and ice, put it on a train bound for Washington, and sent it as a gift to President William Howard Taft. The gesture was simple, but symbolic. It marked the arrival of spring and celebrated the Penobscot River as one of the great salmon rivers in the world. That single act launched a tradition that would last for decades. Each year thereafter, the first Atlantic salmon caught on the Penobscot River was presented to the sitting President of the United States. Sometimes it traveled by rail, sometimes by plane, but it always carried the same message. Maine's waters were alive, productive, and worth honoring. For anglers and communities along the river, the President's salmon became a point of deep regional pride. But beneath the ceremony, the river was changing. Industrial pollution, municipal waste, dams that blocked migration, and decades of pressure on the fishery steadily eroded the salmon runs that once returned in staggering numbers. The tradition survived into the late 20th century, revived briefly in years when adult returns showed signs of hope. But by May of 1992, the moment carried a different weight. That spring, Orono angler Claude Westfall caught the first Atlantic salmon of the season, and it would be the last of its kind. Presented to President George H.W. Bush at his Kennebunkport home, the fish marked the end of an enduring tradition and its quiet end. Today, wild Atlantic salmon in Maine are federally protected, and fishing for them is prohibited under endangered species safeguards. What began as a celebration of abundance has become a powerful marker of loss. The story of the president's salmon is no longer just about a fish sent to Washington. It is a reminder of how closely culture, rivers, and wildlife are intertwined, and how quickly abundance can fade when those connections are strained. And now, back to the second half of this episode.
Lauren Parker showed me a picture he took of a bass with a client, and he's got the mouth of the bass open, and there's 2 crayfish looking out. 2. And that thing still took a lure.
Right.
Yeah, it's like they're gluttonous. But when I did that Bethel deal with Francis Brodigan, I was obviously the older person in the group that sat around the table, and I'm pretty quiet. If I'm in a group of a lot of people, I'm kind of introverted. A lot of those people did not know that smallmouth bass are an invasive species to Maine. And when I mentioned that, everybody was aghast. They said no. They were complaining about fall fish. They were saying, "Can't we get rid of the fall fish?" I said, "Why do you want to get rid of one of the 2 most fun native fishes we have left?"
That's right. And what would the other one be, John?
Brook trout.
Brook trout, right. So brook trout and fall fish, which we, affectionately call chub,
Yes.
are the native fish to the river.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of an interesting bycatch. You can go out when it is warm. Like, I bet you can catch chub, fall fish right in front of where we're sitting right now in the middle of the summer.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, you can.
Probably with reckless abandon.
Yes.
Right? Well, there's no limit on them.
No.
Yeah.
But the guys would say, "But fall." I said, "Look, how many if you can be honest with me, if you're out fishing with a family during the middle of the day when the hot sun beating down, and one of your little clients, like 10, 11 years old, catches a 14, 15-inch fall fish, that's a winning prize for that kid." And I said, "You're not going to catch the same kind of trout that time of day, probably.
No.
But the fall fish will save your day for lots of families that fish here."
And I think that applies also to smallmouth bass.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And
Yeah.
that's what that was all about. It was about catching fish.
Yes.
Maine was basically hanging its hat on the nail that this was a place to come catch fish, and you could.
Yes.
And you still can.
You still can.
Right.
Yeah.
So, John, can you think of an Allagash story or a canoe story, like a travel canoe trip you did where something either went really good or something went really bad, or maybe a combination of the two?
Well, Susan and I honeymooned on the Allagash in 71 in August. She'd never been in a float plane. I didn't warn her about that. That was kind of a iffy situation, but we flew in. She'd never been in a canoe, but I decided we decided we'd do this. So this was before the original Churchill Dam got rebuilt. There was no water in Chase. We were way overloaded. My fault. We had a small 15-foot canoe, and it took my family Springer Spaniel, probably enough food for 6 people instead of just the 2 of us. So we got this heavy load. It's before the waterway, so we have to go down Chase with this load. I got a tremendous headache that day, probably the first time I've ever had a migraine in my life. We get down to the upper end of the next lake, and I'm really in bad shape. Susan, we get the 4-man pop tent up, and I just crash. So she takes care of everything. We get nestled down. She wakes me up later in the night. It's dark. It's blowing a gale, and it's raining sideways, and trees are going down in the woods. She says, "Are you with it enough to make a decision?" I said, "Yeah, I said, we got to get we got to get back into the woods in the smaller trees, find a place to nestle down. So did, because no headlights in those days. We had flashlights. I go back with my little axe and my saw, and I saw out this place in this really thick, small spruce fir away from the big trees. And we move everything back. Of course, the dog is wet now. Everything we've got's wet. We get nestled down in there, and I hear screaming out on the point, yelling. So I put on my rain poncho, grab my flashlight, and I walk out. 2 men, 2 boys. Boys are about 12 years old, in cotton t-shirts, cotton shorts, tennis shoes, no gear. And they're going, "We need help." I said, we took them back to our tent. So I go outside, shelter my little stove with my rain jacket, and I heat up some soup and some hot drink stuff, and Susan's feeding them peanut butter and jelly and cheese and crackers, whatever we can do. And they've got everything that we had for spare clothes on. They were very near hypothermic, and there was no way they could travel on the lake. So
how did they get to there? What had
well,
happened?
I'll tell you, because at the end of this story is the crowning glory for me. It's after midnight. I hear a klaxon horn go off out on the point. The wind has subsided a little bit, and I go out, and it's the game warden from Musaskus Lake. He put those people in at Churchill Dam in the morning to run chase. He couldn't get on the lake with his Boston whaler until he finally did, and he came up looking for them. He said, "Have you seen 2 men and 2 boys?" And I said, "As a matter of fact, I have. They're in our 4-man tent back in the woods." So he's got their bag of stuff. He comes back. They change. He's going to take them back to the fire warden's camp. He's got them in the boat, and he's just about to shove off. And I said, "Hey, you have a radio. You're in contact with the outside world all the time. You got to be," I could use a bad word here, but I won't. I
No,
said,
use it.
You've got to understand that if something can happen to you put these people in there in cotton shirts and cotton shorts and tennis shoes and no gear, no food, no extra layers, no nothing. And I said, you know what? If I hadn't been here, whatever happened to them would be on you. He turned blanch white and stepped in his boat and left. I was pissed.
Right.
And
Cotton kills, Sean.
yeah, it does.
Right. Yeah.
But he knew he's an employee of the state of Maine who's in there all the time. He should know better than that.
Right. What had happened to them?
Well, my dad got a letter from the governor of the state of Minnesota. I didn't know who these people were. I always erred on not asking people about a lot of personal information. So I never got their names, never knew that they got any information from me whatsoever. But Dad got a letter from the governor of the state of Minnesota saying that, thanking him for the fact that me, as his son, saved his son and grandson and nephew and his son on the Allagash. A very nice letter, which we still have. But it's like, that was a great trip because we had a honeymoon, and we never saw a rock from there down the rest of the Allagash. We had 5.5 inches of rain over the Allagash country that day and night.
Amazing.
And the water in the morning was brown and just rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, there were places down the river that I avoided, like the plague, like Long Lake Dam, which is broken out, but it's probably 250 feet across, the old broken out dam from the 2 berms. There was one brown slick going down into like 15 to 20 foot standing waves below that down the pool. And I said to Susan, we're going to put in below this upper drop and just go down the edge along the wood line. We're not going to go through that stuff.
No.
And Allagash Falls was the ranger said, it wasn't a ranger because it was pre-waterway. I can't remember who. Somebody said to me at Michaud Farm, he said, "I know of you, and I know that you don't go down. You go down to the lower portage on the falls. I don't want you to do that." I just said, "Okay, fine, no problem." So I landed down there. I went down to the lower landing anyway, and we camped at the falls. But it was the ground was vibrating to the point where it was hard to sleep.
For the amount of water coming over the falls.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
You talked about just a second ago, I didn't want to interrupt you, John, pre-waterway. Talk to me about the Allagash has become, it now is it's a monument really in the state of Maine. No?
Yeah, well, it's not
Not
officially
officially a
designated
monument,
as
but
one, but people look at it as the crowning trip of all time to go on in the state of Maine. I disagree with them, but I'm not going to argue. It gets the publicity. It got so much publicity around the time of creating the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. Putting the word wilderness into it brought a lot of people from around the country to come do this great wilderness river. And once they got here, they discovered that it's not a wilderness river. It's a river through land that's been lived on by Native Americans. It's been logged. It's been hunted for a long, long time. There's enough habitation just outside the edges of it that it's not really a wilderness. People who come to do this trip go down through the waterway, and they're happy to do it. But the true wilderness people brought a lot of traffic to this country that has since stopped.
I see.
You're not coming to Maine to do the Allagash because it is a, quote, wilderness. You're doing it because it's a great river. It is. And because it's dam controlled, it's accessible to people all season long.
John, can you talk about the Dickey Lincoln Project?
Yeah, I mean, that was a scary thing because it would have put 100 feet of water over the town of Allagash, where the Allagash joins the St. John. And if it hadn't been for the environmentalists finding a couple of a plant and some little tiny organism up in the watershed someplace, and Vietnam, which was sucking up huge quantities of money, Congress turned it down. They said they were going to create this huge, wonderful place for sportsmen. It would have joined the St. John and Allagash well above the town of Allagash. It would have left a huge wooded island there at a low point, and they were trying to book it as a great recreational opportunity for people in this country. I think it would have been a disaster, personally.
I agree. And many people agree. And so many people agreed at the time that it didn't happen.
Right.
I interviewed in one of the earlier seasons of the podcast, John Lund, who owns the Maine Sportsman. And John, of course, was a politician. And he was very involved in the Dickey Lincoln Project when it was going on. And he was a complete opponent of it, did not want it to happen at all. And again, I've never been down through the Allagash. I need to make it a point to do that. But for people like yourself, once it's gone, it never comes back.
Oh.
And it's really great that it didn't happen and it's still there and it's still intact. And although you say it's not a wilderness trip, I think for a lot of people in this modern world, they couldn't imagine it being more wilderness than it is. But for you and I and Nate, where we've actually seen wild places intact, there's a lot of logging roads that go into the Allagash. You can drive to the edge of the Allagash in a lot of places. My
father's biggest battle in his early days on the Allagash was fighting for less access to the Allagash. The only thing that he ever, I do attribute to my dad, was he stopped people from driving in to Sandy Point campsites at Umsaskas Thoroughfare on the American Realty Road. He said, "You coming down the trip, you want to have a place to camp, and you got people in there playing music. They're out in the river in float tubes, playing games and playing loud music." And he said, "There's no place for a through canoe party to camp. Why can't you keep them out of there?" So the waterway they blocked the road off.
Put some boulders in a gate or whatever. Yep. Yeah. I see that happening in places around the state for the right reasons.
Yeah.
You'll never, I have a little mantra I say it to clients often, and I bet you say something like this too, Nate. The road to good fishing is never paved.
Right.
Right.
Unless you put 2,000 12-inch rainbow trout out for a stocking trout.
Right.
But I don't call that good fishing.
No.
Nate, let's go back to you, because you're doing some stuff with Libby's camps now.
Yes.
How long's that been going on?
I'm going into my 5th full-time season working up at Libby.
How do you like it?
I absolutely love it. Libby, Matt Libby Jr., he is the 5th generation running the place. Absolute fabulous guy to work with. And I learned that year 1 up there is you don't work for Matt, you work with Matt. We're all independent contractors as guides up there. The place is like a second home to me and a complete second family to me. There's if I have an issue or I have a problem or I need some help with something, any one of those men or women up there is willing to jump in and help, and I would do the same thing for them. Libby Camps to me was always a place that, because of its prestige, was a place that would be hard to get into to work. And I was very fortunate enough, talking to a friend one year at a fly fishing show in Massachusetts, that he does do work for Matt. And I said I was thinking about moving farther north to work in the North Maine woods to get away from the crowds down the Western Maine area. And I said, I've talked to another camp that I potentially go work at. And he said, no, you're going to come work at Libby.
Wow.
And I got invited up to help one fall with a Trout and Salmon Federation group, which I felt was kind of my inauguration or interview per se, to see if I would fit with the camp life. And it was fabulous. It was eye-opening. Having never been on a float plane and driving 4.5 hours up there and changing in a parking lot and being thrown onto a plane and flown out to a wild stretch of river, very first thing was just, it was mind-blowing to me. And I'm fortunate enough to still call it my second home.
So what is guiding at Libby's like? So is it river fishing? Is it pond fishing?
I would say probably 90% of our fishing is done stillwater out of canoes, Old Town 20-foot XL trippers. The other 10% is river systems, Webster Outlet, T-Loss Cut, Cockamagomic Stream, the Aroostook River, Minsungan Stream, Moose Lick Stream. I mean, we fish all over that country.
Native trout,
and salmon, both trout and landlocked. 95% of it for us is trout fishing up there, though. Wild brook trout.
No competition.
There are times, Michael, when I'm fishing on ponds with 2 customers in the canoe and we don't see anybody else all day long.
No.
And it's your statement to people, my statement to people is brook trout don't live in ugly places. And every pond or stretch of river that you go to up there is beautiful. And it's got its own, there have been other people there, but when you're there by yourself, you feel like you're the first person there.
Right.
Really, truly.
You talked about Matt Libby Jr.
Yeah.
I've met Matt Libby Sr. He was a sugar loafer. He loved to ski.
Yeah.
And so he would be down in that area a lot in the winter when I was living in Farmington. And I've met him a number of times.
Yes.
But I've never been to Libby's camps. What makes Libby's?
Oh, between the family history, the quality of the cabins, the quality of living that you get while you're there, the experience that you get with the guides there, and one of the biggest things is the food. If you go away from a meal at Libby's hungry, it's on you. It's not on Libby camps, and they treat the guides the same way that they treat the customers there. We're not eating hamburgers and hot dogs on a daily basis. We're eating fine meals, prime rib, steak tip, chicken, lobster, you name it. It's served there, and it's the quality of the customer care, I think, is what really brings people back to Libby every single season.
Right.
And we have customers that come every year that they don't care who they have for a guide. but they're there at the same time every single year to fish because they know the quality of treatment and the quality of fish and experience that they get out of being at Libby camps.
The history and the tradition of the Maine sporting camp seems to be on the decline for the same reasons, John, you said it's hard to recruit people to go on a canoe trip for 3 weeks. It's hard to get people, grandfather, son, grandson, to spend a week. But Libby's has really been successful at doing that.
Yes, they have. Yeah.
So what do you think is different?
I think it is just, it's in the name that, Matt Sr.'s dad, and before he passed away, and his mom and the generations before that built into that legacy. And I think the legacy is what keeps people coming back. There is the affiliation with Orvis there. It's both a wing shooting and fishing endorsed lodge. So people understand and find the place because of, I think, that association. But once they start to discover the history of Libby camps, that's what really, really drives them to say, okay, they've been doing this right for 150 plus years. They're still in existence. There's a reason why we need to go visit.
So a little bit of just my own history understanding of Libby's is that it was so remote originally that you could only, you could like walk in there. There was no road in.
So what happened was they used to bring customers by train to Masardis area, and then to what the Libby family had was a hotel in Oxbow. And depending on what time you arrived at the hotel in Oxbow, you'd start up the Aroostook River. So if it was late in the afternoon, you wouldn't start till the next day. And it was a 2-day process to go up the Aroostook River, up over Millinocket Stream Falls and into Millinocket Lake itself. And in that time frame, a lot of the popular fishing areas, the Moosehead, that area, people were easily getting to via train and horse and buggy and all of that stuff. And the original generations of the Libby family said, we're not that far from that region. We have to have the same quality of stuff that's here. And through exploration and time, they did, and they do.
Right.
And
they originally they brought in a milking cow.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a story there. We could go on and on about the evolution of Libby's, but I just find it fascinating that I've never been there. But they really, I think the thing that we're not saying out loud, but I'll say it out loud now, is that a lot of Maine sporting camps have changed hands, right?
Yes.
And the one thing that has not happened at Libby's is it hasn't changed hands.
Fortunately.
And
yes.
you learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
And you teach down through the generations, just like your father has taught you the do's and don'ts of guiding.
Yes.
Matt Libby and their ancestors taught them through all the generations.
Yes.
The do's and don'ts. And they don't go down the don't column very often.
Correct.
They get the food right. They get the fishing right. They get the guiding right. They got the bird hunting right.
Yes.
They do it all right.
Yes.
And you're a part of that.
Yeah. Fortunately, yes. Yeah.
Are you going back next summer?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've been able to basically not have to hang your shingle in Western Maine to do a lot of guiding. You like this.
I love it.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it.
How's it work for your family? Because tell me about you're a married man.
Yeah, I am. Yes, and we have 2 daughters. That first season was the hardest season, and if I had 2 or 3 days off, I would make the journey home just to spend time with the family because the girls were young enough. That started to wear on me more than it was being useful in the long run, right? So that next year, I stayed full-time at camp. So when I say full-time at camp, they usually open mid-May, and the best fishing is towards the end of June, first part of July, and then slows down quite a bit in the summer. And then back again end of August through the end of fishing season in September. So for me now, I'm leaving somewhere around the 10th to 12th of May, and I don't come back till the first part of July. And then I go back again the end of August. And now with bird hunting, I'm staying through the end of October, even first part of November.
Which you did this year.
Yes.
So what happens in the middle of the summer? Do they shut down?
No, they don't.
Yeah, what happens?
So they still have a few customers that are willing to come up to fish. The fishing obviously slows down. You know, surface temperatures start to get pretty warm. Rivers start to drop. You have to hunt the fish a little bit more stealthily, and you got to, treat them with a lot more respect that time of the year. They do close down for a short time frame in July, and that's usually family time, recharge time for the crew at camp.
Have you gone to visit him, Joe?
Yes. 2 years ago, I was on a solo fishing trip to Wadley Pond, and then I was coming back through across Churchill Dam, and I was headed for Ragged Mountain Pond, and I realized that the bridge at Telos, they were being resurfaced. I couldn't go back that way.
I got off the float plane that afternoon and was met by another guide, and of course Matt Jr. is our pilot, and Jeff Labrie looks at Matt and he said, "I got the new guide all settled in the guides camp for you." And of course I walked back into the guides camp to drop my stuff, and my dad's sitting in a rocking chair there. So it was fabulous.
I love it.
Yep.
Yeah. Tell me about your dad, Nate. What's it been like growing up with John Wight?
Big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Big shoes.
Yeah.
He's my motivation for being a better guide and a better human.
Right.
And so
there's something there, isn't there, Nate?
Yeah.
You guys have been through some times.
It's funny. We don't ever talk about a whole lot of deep personal things in life. We've both made our mistakes, and I'm sure I've made a lot of the same mistakes that he has. And I don't think that that's something that's ever needed to be spoken about between the two of us, but he's always been, "Hey, Dad, what do you think about this?" "Oh, I think it's a great idea." "Hey, Dad, have you ever fished here? Have you ever done this? Do you want to go do this?"
Right.
He's always been that person that I can say, "Hey, Pop, do you want to go fish smallmouth with me? Or do you want to come down here and try pre-spawn smallmouth on one of the Rang ponds, or go fish pike, or do whatever?" And he's willing to do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so he has made a great legacy for this family to follow in.
Oh, yeah.
And I did not follow down the same path. Obviously, I don't do as many canoe trips, but without his leadership in the early years about fly fishing and tying flies, I wouldn't be where I'm at now.
Right. You guys have a little business. Who has the business?
Separate businesses, sure.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. John. So I know just by following some of the you on social media that you've done some trips out to like Salmon River. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah,
you've led some trips out there.
About 35 years worth of being out there.
And you sell flies.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, he ties the fancy, really nice stuff. I just finished 14,125 flies this year because I tie a lot of crap stuff for New York State. Tying stuff for New York State, for the Salmon River, salmon and steelhead fishery is really easy. Cheap stuff, quick stuff to tie. And this year I think I sold close to 12,000 of them out there when I was there for a week.
Wow. Egg patterns, nymphs, things like that.
Yeah, they're eggs.
Yeah.
Basically.
Got it.
And I've got, over the years, I've built up a lot of clientele who still sometimes call me and say, "Can I get 200 of these, 200 of those?" And say, "Yeah, fine."
And you tie them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're all tied. I've got probably 6,000 or 7,000 flies out there right now at the house that I've been staying at. A house that's frequented by guides and owned by a man who rents out his spare rooms to guides who want to come and fish.
What's it called?
It doesn't have a bit. Jerry Duva is his name. He has a house halfway between Altmar and Pulaski on the right, and by word of mouth, I got a chance to call Jerry one time and get into his house. Nate's been there. It's a great deal. He's $35 a night, but you can cook your own food. It's clean. He's got somebody that cleans every single day. And it's just fishermen in there. It can be as many as 14 or 15 fishermen at a time, but they're all fishermen. And everybody who stays there has bought my flies anyway, so it's great. And fine.
It's a unique place that, like, over the years, Jerry's weeded out the party crowd and
Good.
party animals. So it's a harder, it's not an easy place to get into. But again, Jerry's a fabulous guy, and our good friend Rick, who guides out there, is really the reason why we started getting in there, because Rick stays there on a yearly basis to guide on the salmon. So it's a fabulous, and Jerry's become a really good friend of Dad's over the years too. They have quite a bit in common.
Right. Let's go to talk about your tying, Nate. How has it evolved, and what's it turned into?
Tying for me, again, really, really helped save my life, but I wanted to find a way to make my mark on the fly fishing industry, and I felt tying was a great way to do it. And I sunk a lot of my time into going to shows and working with different companies, and tied on several pro staffs, ran several pro teams in the industry. Worked for John Larrabee at HMH Fly Tying Vices, helped run his pro team for him, traveled to shows with him all the time. Great friend, great company. This last spring, I got fed up with the social media machine, which is how you really make your name in the fly tying world and fly tying industry, and how you can sell flies quite easily. I got tired of that, and I said to my wife one day, I'm going to give it all up. And she was like, focus on your guiding. That's what you've really wanted to do. Just focus more on your guiding. So I contacted every company that I was affiliated with, and gracefully bowed out from their pro staff, and basically vanished off of social media. And that actually was not really fully felt until, actually, it was the spring before I did that. It wasn't really felt till this last winter when I started having people that I knew at shows contact me and say, "Where are you? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you doing this stuff?" And
right.
I basically just said, it's not my thing anymore. Like, I don't really feel like I need to be out there beating the bushes with people, and I don't feel like I need to feed that Instagram machine a fly every single day to make a name for myself. And I'm happy teaching people how to fish and watching people catch fish, if that makes sense to you. I do still sell flies, but it's mostly to acquaintances, customers. I tie a lot of custom stuff for people. People will say, "Hey, my grandfather used to fish this fly," and I'll say, "If you got one, send it to me. Tell me how many you want. I'll tie them up for you, and I'll get them back along with your original." And that really fed. But I tied commercially for a while for shops. Wasn't my thing. Just not making any money off of it. Too much stress. Opened my own website, Northwoods Fly. And, between word of mouth and social media, it'd be a random, I need 2 of these, 4 of these, 6 of these, whatever. And I'd sit down and do it. And it kept fly tying from being boring, but that also got to the point where it was really stressful. And my wife would print off the orders and be like, "You got to get these done. You got to get them out." And I was several weeks behind. Customers understood, but I started to lose the love for the fly tying and the reason why I did it. So that was another portion of dropping out of all of that stuff.
That's an interesting point. You really can love something to death.
Yeah.
You can love fly fishing to death. You can love fly tying to death. And it's a case where you probably loved fly tying to death.
Yes.
You leaned on it for income.
Yeah.
And, it's easy to do that in guiding too.
100%.
And that's why it's so important, I think, to diversify, so you're not just beating the same drum over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I just know that for myself, I can't do the same trip day after day after day.
No.
And for that reason, it keeps it going. At my age, I'm still interested. I'm excited about next year.
Yes.
John, what would you like? I mean, I know that we never really came out and said it, but you taught at Gould Academy.
Yes.
How did you come to Gould Academy?
I went to an outdoor education conference outside of Boston and met a man that worked at Camp Winona. I was still teaching at the Dublin School and was very unhappy with the way things were going in that little tiny school, struggling to stay alive. So this guy said, "You ought to consider coming up here and looking at someplace like Camp Winona. We need somebody to run the senior canoe trip program and teach junior Maine guide. Susan and I, we decided to do it. I did. We moved our two young kids just Amanda into Camp Winona for the first summer, and I had obviously met Alan Ordway, who had purchased the camp from the original owners, and spent that first summer there. And he listened to my stories of how unhappy I was at Dublin. And the next winter, he called me up and he said, Gould Academy, he said, I'm the president of the board of trustees. We really need somebody in math and science. Would you be interested in coming up and taking a look? And I said, yes, probably. He said, did you ever write a resume? I said, no. He said, find out how to write one and write one. Send it. I got an invite to go to Gould, got a tour, got an offer for money that was more than twice what we were making at the time. And I said to Susan, by then we had two kids. I said, it's time. They're not in school yet. We're going to make the move. We got to make the move. So we made the move.
Yeah. So when was that, John?
I remember teaching in the fall of 79.
Got it. That's when it would have been your first year at Bethel.
Yep.
What was Bethel? It must have been like a heaven to you.
Well, I'd driven through there a million times, headed for the Rangeleys and other places to go on canoe trips, but I went right by Gould Academy, never thought about stopping and asking any questions about it.
Yeah.
So that was
Gould known as a ski school at that point, or what? I know it was a private school, but did it have an identity at that point?
Well, I'm not sure. It's always fought against the moniker of being called a school, a ski academy, because it really isn't. It's a great school that has great skiing opportunities, but kids at Gould in the ski program go to school a whole heck of a lot more than they do at most ski academies, and they're held to a high level of financial responsibility, which I'm sure the ski academies do too. But I mean, when Gould sends kids to France to ski for a month on some of their upper level kids, or they send them to South America, or they send them to Mount Hood in the summer, those kids are still doing schoolwork.
Good. Yeah.
So
academics are a priority.
Yeah, and there are some snowboard. We've got 3 or 4 kids on the U.S. snowboard team from Gould. Those kids, their last year or so at Gould, they weren't at Gould during the wintertime. They were traveling the World Cup circuit.
Right.
Going to school.
Right. Cool. And you were a part of that.
I wasn't part of the coaching on that level.
No.
But I was part of teaching for sure.
The other thing that I know about you, John, is that you're an avid cross-country skier.
Yes.
And you'll go out when there's just enough snow to make the pine cones not so scratchy.
I thought of it about 3 days ago.
Yeah. And you do winter camping.
Yeah, I did 20 of the week-long programs for juniors at Gould, and I've prided myself on saying that I've slept more than a year of my life in snow on various trips to mountains up here, and with those Gould programs. I just sold my winter tent this last spring.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah. But you had it set up on your property, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. And you go out there and spend the night in it?
Yeah, but I had my ski trails all packed and tracked, and I could put my headlamp on and go out and cross-country ski at night and sleep in my tent.
Wonderful. We're not far from Carter's cross-country ski area, are we?
No, we're not.
Yeah. Do you ever go down there and ski?
I used to quite a bit, until I got a chance to buy this year 2000 Scandeck Ski-Doo. That was a man down here in the Intervale View farm bought, and he used it only for packing so he could ski in the Intervale fields down here. I bought it from him. It's still going. It's going to be hauled away in the next week to get its carburetors serviced. It's a great thing. No computer, runs on no e-gas. It's 2-stroke, but it just keeps going, and it's 2,300 miles, and it's only ever just been packing tracking cross-country trails.
Yeah. Well, so you're a third generation Maine guide. You're a fourth generation Maine guide.
Yep.
John, how would you like people to remember you? What would you like your legacy to be after you leave?
Oh, geez. Wow, that's a toughie. I guess I would just like to be known as a guy who spent a lot of time teaching kids. Didn't have to be academics. It could be anything. Opportunities to teach kids are still one of the things that really drives me. I was just in at Upper Dam before it closed. The present head of school at Gould has a camp at Upper Dam, and we took kids in for they came in late Saturday night and only got a chance to fish Sunday morning and spend a lot of the day there. But I got the chance to tie flies with all 7 of those kids in the evening, and I'm too old and too unsteady on my feet to wade out into the pool anymore to help a kid out there, but I can show them how to tie knots. I collected some entomological specimens around the pool for them to show them, and then tied some flies with them. That's for me, that's great. That's all I need.
I can tell that you're a giver, not a taker, John. To be a teacher, you have to be a giver.
Yeah, and so many kids that I've, in the 44 to 45 years of my private school teaching, that have contacted me later in their life and say, thank you. I was a shithead at the time. You were patient with me, you worked with me, and you tried to do your best.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it now.
Yeah. And they touched your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want the next 30 years of your guiding to be like, Nate? What do you want the next 50 years of your guiding to be like, Nate, when you stop at 94?
Whew, I hope I can make it that far.
No, I'm kidding. But seriously, what would you like to see happen? I mean, are you going to stay with Libby's?
Yeah.
Right.
As long as they'll have me.
Right.
As long as I can be there. And I've told both my girls, if you want to be the 5th generation of the family, all you have to do is say so, and we can make it happen. And if you don't, I totally understand. Guiding is not a great way to make a full-time living, and you got to have some other side hustles in there to help you out along the way. But
right.
I don't want to ever have to leave what I'm doing right now. The peace of mind, the ease of the soul, the excitement I get every single day watching people catch brook trout in Maine or shoot their first grouse like I had happen with a kid this year. It never gets old. And I guess the day that it does get old is the day that I probably need to find something else to move on to. But I don't think it's ever going to get old.
Yeah,
I don't.
With the podcast, I interview authors and business owners and people of different ilks, but I really like to come back to the guides because I think that there's something, I know that my clients, they'll call me on the phone, and most of these guys are from out of state and they live boring lives. They make a lot of money and they live boring lives.
Yeah.
And they live vicariously through us.
100%.
They think that we are living the life that they wish they could live.
Yes.
And little do they know that, you and I are looking at our checking account and going, I don't know if I'm going to make the bills this next month.
You're 100%
I mean,
right.
I do that on a daily basis, right? We worry about, we don't make a lot of money.
No.
No one gets, I don't know of a millionaire that owns a fly tying company.
No. No.
Right, John?
No.
Oh, no.
It's funny you say that. So our financial advisor, Shane, and I have one in Brunswick, and I truly thought when I left my full-time job 5 years ago that he was going to have a hissy fit. And Shane had told him, Nate's leaving. He's working at Libby camps, and he went, no way. That is awesome. He gets to get on a float plane and fly out and fish with customers and experience everything. He's like, I'm totally jealous. 100% opposite of what I expected him to be like, because his world is financially driven. But for him to look at somebody like me and say, we'll make this work one way or another, we'll figure it out. But that is an awesome job to have. It was pretty special.
Nate, I had that same exact experience. I was in the hustle.
Yeah.
I was in the grind. I was working in a different capacity than I am now. And I when I made a life decision change like you did,
yeah,
I went to my financial advisor, mine's in Wyndham.
Yeah.
And I went in with my tail between my legs.
Yeah.
Thinking he's going to scold me.
Yeah.
Why would you ever leave that job that you made all that money at?
Yeah.
I've never been happier.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you've never been happier.
Never been happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely a strain for you to be gone from your family, but it sounds like you're making it work.
We make it work. Yeah. The girls understand that this is the time frame that I'm gone is needs to be done because it allows us to do the extra fun things as a family in the wintertime. Thank God my wife has a fabulous paying job because otherwise we wouldn't be able to make ends meet. But they also understand that I come back as a better person from doing it.
Yeah. And a happier person.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm 50. I'll be 56 in December. You're 48?
48. Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
These are the years of our lives that we can't be living an unhealthy lifestyle because it really makes you age quickly.
Well, yeah.
And your dad, I mean, John, you're 80 now?
Mm-hmm.
You don't look 80. And that's because you've lived a quality life of clean living and doing things that make your heart go pitter-pat, and you never worked for the man.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, it was easy to sign a contract to go back to teach at school, but because I had all that time off to continue guiding is worth it. And there's one thing that neither Nathan nor I have said, but the other thing about guiding, whether you're canoeing or fishing or whatever you are, you're away from the noise.
Tell me about that.
The world today, I mean, I get out on the Allagash. I never think about what's going on in the outside world. It never crosses my mind. But when you're back here, if you turn on the damn TV and listen to the news, it's just, there it is. The continuous cacophony of sound and sound bites and somebody's opinions just bombarding you all the time. And when I'm out in the woods and waters or cross-country skiing or canoeing someplace or fishing with somebody, I don't hear any of it. It's gone. I keep looking at the horizon sometimes at night, say, well, I don't see any mushroom clouds and I don't hear a lot of planes going over, so I guess we're still okay.
It's great. Well, you guys, we shared a great story here, and I know it'll be really meaningful for the audience to hear what it sounds like to listen to two generations of Maine guides share their stories, and you guys have done it so well, and it means everything to me that you took the time out of your day to sit down and share your stories. And thank you both for joining the Flyline Podcast.
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thank you very much for being here.
That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us for this intimate discussion, and thank you for listening to Flyline Podcast. We're proud to be sponsored by Geiger, the world's largest family-owned promotional products distributor based in Lewiston, Maine. Their support helps us share the rich history of Maine's fishing community through the stories that will be cherished for generations. A new Flyline Podcast episode is released every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, so be sure to come back to meet our next famous guest. Until then, this is Michael Jones, and we invite you to visit the blog section of our website to enjoy photos and contributions from our guests and experience all of the episodes at flylinepodcast.com.